Hello everybody, how's it going? I'm Prince Dumi. Welcome to I almost said Prince Dumi Reacts. Okay, I've been doing the reaction channel a lot. Let's try this again.
Later, in the void.
Hello everybody, how's it going? I'm Prince Dumi and welcome to Writing Thoughts. Today I'm going to be talking about 11 things in writing that writers and stories do that irritates me so much. My next video I will talk about the 11 positive things that writing does that I love, but I'm going to start off by being negative and complaining because I wanted to get this out of the way first, because as much as I express these things like in writing and through Facebook posts and stuff, it's actually very exhausting to talk about it on camera. I don't know why. But without further ado, let's begin. First on my list, when the story doesn't deliver what it promised. I'm talking about when the story is supposed to be one genre and it ends up being another one entirely. For example, what the CW loves doing, they promise you a superhero story and instead they give you a soap opera that just happens to have superheroes in it. Or a book promises you a war fantasy adventure story and instead gives you a fantasy romance story with a little bit of war and adventure in the background. I hate this. If you know what you are writing, then describe it properly. Don't promise your readers one thing and then give them another. Give them what they asked for. There are people who seek out fantasy romance and there are people who seek out fantasy adventure. And yes, there are writers who do a mix of everything, and that's fine. But if you know what's the center of your story is supposed to be, then give your readers what you promised. I love romance as a side plot in a story, but it's not what I came for. I came for what you promised me. I came for the superhero story. I came for the fantasy story. I came for the war story. The romance comes secondary. It is not the most important thing to me. So long as you keep it as a side plot, I will invest in your story's romance. But the moment you force it into the center of everything, I'm going to be put off and I'm going to feel deceived because you didn't give me the story that you promised. Number 2, when the writer tries so hard to subvert my expectations that they end up subverting my expectations for a good story. Look, subverting the reader's expectations is fine, but if you are going to compromise good and quality storytelling for the sake of subversion, then just don't do it. Be a little predictable or find a better way to bring in your subversions. Subversions just for the sake of subversion doesn't work. If you don't believe me, just see how angry people are when they watch The Last Jedi. I was one of those people. I went into that movie expecting so much and also expecting to be surprised, but instead the writer did nothing but try to surprise me. I ended up regretting that new Star Wars movies even existed when originally I was very excited about them. So please, don't put in subversions just for the sake of subversions. Have a purpose to them and make sure that they support the main plot. Do not throw your plot to the side for the sake of surprising people with what they didn't expect, because you're going to end up frustrating your reader rather than surprising or shocking them. You want to surprise them, you want to amaze them, you want to blow their minds, you don't want to irritate them. Number 3, when the character's backstory or motivations have been changed completely to fit in whatever new narrative the writer has created for them. A good example of this is in The Big Bang Theory with Amy Farrah Fowler. When Amy was first introduced, she was exactly like Sheldon Cooper. Even when she spoke about her history and her upbringing, and even when they showed her mother, it was very clear that she was a very weird person. She was very quirky. She was not an attached person. She was not somebody who craved human contact, and the only time she ever bothered dating people was because her family was pressuring her to do it. So she was not lonely in the least bit. But then over time, as she got to interact with the other characters in the show, her personality slowly started changing as a result of their influence. So Amy went from somebody who was not interested in human interaction to somebody who was craving it. She went from somebody who was not that interested in friendship to someone who actually valued her friends and who stuck close to them. And she went from somebody who was very bad at reading other people to being somebody who started being a lot better at reading people. In other words, her friends influenced and changed her and grew her as a person. But now the problem was, anytime the new Amy spoke about her past, She spoke about her past as if she was a lonely person in the past. She spoke about her past as if she had craved human interaction before. Everything that she spoke of about her past contradicted the person who she was introduced to be in the beginning. Her past was basically retconned to match the present her, instead of the writers acknowledging that this person has changed over time. And it was irritating. Please don't do that. Another example is from the Percy Jackson books, or more accurately, the Heroes of Olympus books. In the Percy Jackson books, Nico D'Angelo had gone very dark and very emo after Percy Jackson failed in keeping his promise to keep his sister alive. So in the span of roughly 2 weeks, Nico was abandoned by his sister, and then that same sister ended up dying, and he ended up blaming Percy. He ran off into the woods. He fell into a labyrinth full of monsters, and it was there that he realized that he was son of the Lord of the Dead, and he learned how to resurrect dead people, commune with ghosts, control them, blah blah blah. And over that time, he went very dark and very brooding and very emo, because he had just been going through so much emotional crap and he didn't know how to deal with it. So Nico turning dark and turning angry for all of that made sense. And then the Heroes of Olympus books came, and the author decided to turn Nico gay. Okay, fine, whatever. But then when book 5 of that series came out and we got to look at things from Nico's point of view, suddenly every single motivation Nico had in the past related to his sexuality. Suddenly he wasn't angry with Percy because his sister died. He was angry with Percy because his crush let him down. Suddenly his desire to help the Olympians beat the Titans because the Titans were evil was not a motivator anymore. Instead, he wanted to help Percy because he was hoping that by helping Percy, he would get Percy to be interested in him romantically. And the more the author dug into Nico's past, the more and more of his motivations around his sister's death, around his personal struggles and discovering who he was as son of the Lord of the Dead, the more his personal issues of feeling like an outcast were pushed aside and changed and altered, so that every single problem he had was because he was gay, and that was the central reason for all of his problem. He was gay, that's why he was angry about this. He's gay, that's why he's angry about that. He's gay, that's why he's alone. He's gay. His whole problem is that he's gay, and that was frustrating. Nico was an outcast because he was son of the Lord of the Dead, not because he was gay. And because Hades himself was an outcast amongst the Olympians, it made sense for Nico to be an outcast among the Olympians. Because Nico's sister died after Percy promised to keep her alive, it made sense for him to be angry. But now his sister's death was undermined for his sexuality, and that was frustrating. Please do not do this. If you're going to make changes to your character along the line, do not change their past. Stick to what you wrote. My fourth point is sort of related to my third one. This is when good writing is compromised for the sake of wokeness. You know what I'm talking about. If you've watched the CW show, you definitely know what I'm talking about. The CW shows used to be really good in their early seasons, but then somewhere along the line, they started cramming so much political correctness into their stories, so much feminism, so much gender politics, so much political stuff into their stories, and it ended up dominating everything else. Suddenly the stories didn't make sense anymore. Suddenly character decisions and character choices didn't make sense anymore, because all that mattered was pleasing every single demographic instead of telling the stories that these stories were supposed to tell. Young Justice has also done this. Season 1 and 2 were incredible. I loved them. And then the show was cancelled, and then 10 years later we get season 3. And season 3, while good, it wasn't at the same level as the first 2 seasons. And I can understand, because a 10-year gap is huge. But also one big problem was all of the changes that were made to the story, all of the changes that were made to the tone. There was a lot of very, very obvious political influence in every episode. And one particular irritation for me was in the character of Halo. Halo herself was a very, very interesting character. She was a living mother box living in the body of a Muslim girl who had been murdered. That alone made her interesting, but then they tried to make her the poster child for everything. It wasn't enough that she was a person of color and that she was Muslim. Now she was also struggling with her sexuality. Now she wasn't sure what gender she was. Now she was also struggling with alcoholism, and they just kept piling stuff on and on and on. They started piling so much stuff on her, trying to fit so many demographics into one character. It was kind of
75 years later.
She was kind of all over the place. They couldn't just stick with the direction for her. They had to, it was like they were trying to make her character fit in for everybody, and it is impossible to make one character fit in for everyone because each and every single person is unique. Each and every single person is different. Yes, each person has complex differences about them, but one person cannot fit in for everyone. It's just not doable. You're not going to get a good story if you do that. I ended up losing touch with Halo because it was just too much. One example I can give is in the middle of a mission briefing when Miss Martian was even saying she was glad to have more girls on the team, and in the middle of a mission briefing, Halo interrupted it to have a whole thing where she's not actually a girl, she's not a boy either, she's neither one or the other, and then she has to turn to a boyfriend again in the middle of a mission briefing to ask him if that's okay, and then they have the whole little relationship moment where he's
3 hours later.
he's telling her that he accepts her for who she is, whether she thinks she's a boy or a girl, blah blah blah, and it was just so forced in. I mean, why would you do this in the middle of a freaking mission briefing? Even the relationship between Halo and her boyfriend, Brion, it was just too much. I was more interested in the idea of a mother box, a living computer living in the body of a teenage girl and struggling to make sense of these new emotions that it wasn't used to having, all while having all of these new powers manifest that normally don't show in one person. That was interesting. All of the other stuff was unnecessary. It did nothing but drag the story even more, and the story was already dragging because of all of the extra PC crap that was crammed into the third season. And I mean, even when Beast Boy started forming an entirely different group that would operate outside of UN law and basically be outsiders who are not affiliated with the Justice League, I thought this was a good direction for the story, because right now I felt that many of the Justice League's operations had been crippled by Lex Luthor being in charge of the UN. And then when different people chose to join Garfield and become the outsiders, one line that really irritated me was when Static joined, and his only reason for joining was the team needed a little color. Really? That's your only motivation for joining this team, is that it needed a little color? Not that you wanted to inspire people, not that you wanted to do good in the world, but because you thought that the team needed a little color? Are you kidding me? As a black man, this irritated me so much. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing us in other stories. I love seeing us getting more roles and getting more representation in other stories. But when you start making it all about that, or when you start patting yourself on the back for that, or when it seems like the only reason this character is here is because of the color of their skin, or because of their sexuality, or because of this, or because of that, and not because they actually choose to be because they want to make a difference, I cannot get behind this character. Let me tell you something. You're not going to satisfy me by putting a black character in a story. You will satisfy me by putting in a well-written black character in a story. But if you put in a black character in a story just to be woke, but you don't actually put in good work, good writing, good character arcs, good development, and good substance in the story, I will not care that your characters are black. I'm going to tell you your story is trash. Number 5, also sort of related to number 4, when the female lead tries to be the main character. Oh, I hate this. You can all remember Iris West from the Flash series. No, Barry, you're not the Flash. We're the Flash. No, Iris, you're not the Flash. You're the Flash's wife. And why can't you be your own person. Why should the female lead be a carbon copy of the male? Why should she be the male character but with a vagina? Why can she not be her own character with her own depth, her own interest, her own values, her own things that she brings to the story that the main character cannot bring? Why does she have to be another version of him? I mean, I like it when female lead and the main character have things in common, because that makes it easier to ship them and that makes it easier to support their relationship. But I still want her to be her own person. I still want her to be supporting him while also being an independent woman. Let her be her own person while she supports him and while he supports her. Don't turn her into him. The show is not about her, it's about him. And I'm saying this him and her stuff because when the main character is a female, you will rarely see the male character try to be the female character. But when the main character is a male and he has a female lead, the female lead for some reason has to be like him. And I hate that. Look at Superman and Lois Lane. She is her own, yes, Clark Kent and Lois Lane are both reporters, but Lois is still very much her own person outside of Superman. And that's why the dynamic works, because she is still her own woman even if she supports him. Number 6, the line, "We're not so different, you and I." Oh my goodness. Why does every villain say this within 3 seconds of meeting the hero? Every single time. They always throw this line in even when it makes no sense. I mean, sometimes they'll just throw it in for no reason and then the hero would feel conflicted over it, even though there was no reason for the hero to feel conflicted over it. But now, sometimes they'll just throw it in and the hero won't even acknowledge the line. It's as if every single writer has a quota where if you have a villain and the villain meets the hero, the villain has to say, "We're not so different, you and I," even if he doesn't know anything about the hero, even if the hero doesn't acknowledge the line. So long as the villain says it, he's a real villain. I hate this. Stop using this line where it doesn't make sense. Stop it. Just stop. I think the only time I can think of where the line actually makes sense is when the hero starts compromising their morals, or when the villain does something that the hero did but the villain takes it too far. Then this line makes sense. But other than that, it's just so stupid. Stop using it. It doesn't make sense at all. Just stop. Number 7, when a story's consistency is thrown out the window. Now, there are some stories that from the very beginning to the very end are never consistent, and I will never complain about those stories. But I'm talking about stories that have specific rules from the very beginning, and it sticks to those rules for book 1, for book 3, even for book 4. And yes, I know I skipped number 2, ignore that, but the point is, for a few books, the story is consistent, and then somewhere along the line the writers say screw it and throw all consistency out, and then they do whatever they want despite all of the pre-established lore in the first 3 books. This drives me insane. Now, there are writers who sometimes make little mistakes or who forget about the little rules they made for their story. I can overlook that if it's like 1 or 2 slip-ups. But what I cannot stand is when a new plot point or where a new threat for a story is something that shouldn't be possible because of the pre-established rules in the earlier books. You cannot do that because it just makes all of the previous points of tension in previous books and stories meaningless. If you erase rules or if you change them for your new plots, then what was the point of the previous plots? Then it doesn't matter anymore. Come on, no, don't do that. Number 8, when a story spends chapters or books just building up to the final conflict, and when we finally reach it, it's over in a snap. It's over in a few seconds and it's so anticlimactic. I hate that. You spend so much time and energy building up to this big battle, promising me a good fight, going on and on and on about how impossibly powerful the bad guy is, and yet you've defeated them in like 1 page? Are you serious? So you're telling me that people were worried about nothing if you could beat the bad guy that easily? Where's the struggle? Why was reaching the final battle a struggle but the final battle was a breeze? Like, then what was the point of even struggling to the final battle? No, don't do this. You need to have an impact in your final conflict, or it's going to be disappointing. Oh my word, you guys, this video is actually super exhausting to record. My goodness. Number 9, when important plot points are pushed aside for irrelevant drama. Marvel's Runaways did this to me, and this is why I couldn't even watch season 2. I was just so irritated with that show. Anytime something interesting and plot relevant happened, it was pushed aside for teenage drama, and it was so forced in. The end of the world is at stake. Let's talk about a relationship. A girl has discovered she can fly. Let's focus on the fact that she kissed the guy straight afterwards. Nothing mattered except the stupid teen drama. Not the fact that a girl could fly. Not the fact that a guy was able to speak to his father through time. No, none of that mattered. All that mattered was a stupid teenage and family drama that seemed to be dominating everything else. Oh my goodness, that was so irritating. At the end of that first season, I just had enough. This was the first time and only time I had ever quit a Marvel show after one season. Even with the ones that are not so great in their first seasons, I give them another chance for second seasons. But not with Runaways. It was just no. I'm actually kind of mad that this show has a third season, but Cloak and Dagger got cancelled after 2 seasons. Cloak and Dagger was so much better. But guys, no, don't do this. Drama and tension in a story is good. Drama makes the story interesting. But if the drama gets in the way of the plot, don't put it in. Put in drama that complements the plot, that makes it hard for the main characters to pull off what they're trying to do. Put obstacles in their way. Put emotional turmoil about their responsibilities in their way. But don't force things. Make them natural for the story. Number 10. This is a big one for me. When stories glorify depression, cynicism, and negativity, and basically being a douche. I hate this so much. Oh my gosh, you guys, I hate this so much. First of all, depression is the reason so many people are taking their own lives. So why exactly are you trying to promote it as some sort of superpower, as something that actually makes a person seem wiser, smarter, higher than all of the happy people in the world, more known, more woke, more together than all the happy people in the world? I hate this so much. Anytime there's a bit of light, a bit of positivity, a bit of love, a bit of people treating each other well, storytellers will treat this as naivety, as childishness, as foolishness, as stupidity, as a person not being strong, and they will treat the person who is depressed, who is cynical, who is negative, who is down on themselves, who is constantly self-destructing as the wise one, as the good one, as the intelligent one, as the one who really knows how the world works. But all you're really showing me is that quitting and giving in to the most soul-crushing parts of myself is what makes me stronger. Are you kidding me? Are you really trying to tell people that it's good for them to be depressed? Are you really trying to tell people that it's good for them to be negative, to be dark, to give in to their baser instincts instead of actually striving to improve themselves? You're actually trying to tell me that people are wiser when they self-destruct instead of self-improving? Are you kidding me with that crap? No! I do not have an issue with stories which highlights depression and which highlights the reality of it. But my issue is with stories that make it seem like depression and mental illnesses and all sorts of mental or psychological trauma somehow makes you a better person. No, it doesn't. These are things that are killing people every single day. People are killing themselves because they cannot handle the stuff. People are miserable because of all of these issues that they have, and you are trying to tell them that having these issues is better than actually being happy and actually enjoying your life and actually enjoying being alive. No! I am strongly against writers who do this. Your stories have messages whether you like it or not. And I will rather go to a story that will pick people up and show them that they can improve, show them that they can even seek out help for their issues, than tell them it's good that they have these issues. I will never support a story that promotes this sort of toxic mentality. I refuse. And now, number 11, the final one. When the protagonist with superpowers says, I don't want to have these powers. I want to be normal. I want to be like everybody else. No, shut up. No, you don't. Literally everybody wants to be special. Everybody wants to be unique. Everybody wants to stand out. And you're telling me that now that you are standing out, you want to be like everybody else instead of being special? You want to be no different from anybody else? Are you kidding me with that message? No, screw that. However, if a story has a protagonist with powers where the powers actually ruins their lives or makes it hard for them to enjoy living, then I can understand the protagonist not wanting to have those powers. But if those powers come with nothing but benefits and very, very minimal shortcomings, and the protagonist is actually complaining about being able to fly or being indestructible or being able to run really fast or being able to teleport, I am not going to buy their complaints. Honestly, give the powers to me, because you are clearly not appreciating what you have. This is a stupid thing to complain about. And it's also kind of promoting this message that nobody should ever be special. Everybody should just be average and mundane. And nobody wants to be that. Everybody, well, I mean, there are people who want to be that, but most people want to stand out. Let your characters enjoy their powers. Now, if the powers brings bad guys into their lives and hard times into their lives, fine, let them struggle with that. Let them maybe regret having their powers because of that. But I am so sick of listening to protagonists whine because they are able to do cool stuff. It doesn't make sense and it is not relatable at all. Oh, recording this was actually really exhausting. I look forward to recording the positives about all of the stuff that writers do that I love, because actually sitting here for I don't know how long and talking about all of the stuff in writing I hate was actually really exhausting. Anyway, if you enjoyed all of this negativity, I feel sorry for you, but you're welcome to hit like, you're welcome to hit subscribe. If there are things in writing or things that writers do or stories do that you hate and that you can't stand or that you wish writers would stop doing, please comment it below. Let's discuss. If you don't agree with some of my points, go ahead, comment below. Maybe I'll respond to you, maybe I'll ignore you, maybe I'll mock you. Let's see. Thank you for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.